All right, A to Z Sports, Sam Phelan with Buck Rising here after another Titans preseason victory. The Titans victorious in walk-off fashion tonight, Buck, with a game-winning field goal off the foot of Braden Narveson by a final score of 16-15.
That was check.
Yeah, I had to double check. There was some weird scores in there with some field goals. We had a little bit of Malik Willis action, had a little bit of Mason Rudolph action. Buck and I are going to give our thoughts on both quarterbacks, who else stood out for the Titans tonight in preseason game number 2. But first, going to tell everybody about our new partners over at DeAndre Hopkins Football Camp, D-Hop Youth Football Camp. That is September 1st over at Nissan Stadium, 1:30 p.m. Central Time.
Right here, not over
right
at
here,
Nissan Stadium.
over at
right
Nissan
here.
Stadium. Sometimes I forget we are standing at Nissan Stadium. When
Weird
we
thing
do
to
some
forget
of
with
these
it in the
things.
background.
But yeah, DeAndre Hopkins Football Camp. Listen, there's not many opportunities for your child to go and learn from a future Hall of Fame wide receiver and play football on an NFL field. We are right here, Nissan Stadium, DeAndre Hopkins Football Camp. It's $99, $108 after taxes, and when you use our code ATOZ20, you can get 20% off enrollment in the camp. 20% off DeAndre Hopkins Football Camp. Go sign up. The link is all over A to Z and ATOZ20, that code. So, Buck, Titans victorious walk-off fashion today, 16-15. Braden Narveson, the hero, kind of the unexpected hero. And cool story, 59-yard field goal to put him ahead, then comes through later in the game with the game winner, and kind of, doesn't change things in Tennessee. Nick Folk still the kicker here. That's not going to change at all, but good for Braden Narveson to put something on tape, potentially win himself a job somewhere else. Practice squad opportunity here. We'll see. This is what preseason's kind of all about.
So 2 notes on that. Brian Callahan was asked if there was any difference in the kicking competition after Braden Narveson's night, because it was very impressive. There's not that many kickers that can just come out here and drill it from 40 or 59 yards the way that he did. And Brian Callahan was kind of straight up about it and said, no, it doesn't, not really anticipating any changes in the kicking pecking order at this point, which I appreciate that transparency. That keeps things, status quo. It makes sure that both guys kind of know where they stand with the coaching staff if they didn't already. And then the second thing is that Colt Anderson, the special teams coordinator, is the person that talked Brian Callahan into it, because Brian Callahan was going to punt at that particular moment. Apparently Colt Anderson got his attention on the sideline, said, no, let the kid try it. Kid tried it, kid made it.
Yeah, look, Braden Narveson kind of knows where he stands, but Nick Folk is pushing 40 and going to turn 40 sometime during this season. So maybe there's an opportunity here for the Titans to keep a future kicking option on the practice squad while they've got an aging veteran on the active roster. And if not, who knows what kind of kicking issues are around the league. But yes, Nick Folk is your kicker. Don't get any funny ideas out there. That's not changing, but for now, good for Braden Narveson. Buck, who else stood out for you in tonight's game? I guess a lot of people probably curious about how you feel about the quarterback situation. We saw a little bit of Malik Willis, saw a little bit of Mason Rudolph. I'm not sure either one was overwhelmingly good, but Brian Callahan said they both played good enough.
Well, Brian Callahan said they played good enough to win, right? Like, that's the cliche as old as time. Tonight it was good enough to win. Whether it was good or not is a different subject matter, and I do think that one was significantly better than the other in terms of the situational football that they were presented with, because the way that it was supposed to break down was they were going to get quarters based on how the coaching staff decided that they were going to divvy this thing up. And with Malik Willis, he was scheduled to get the start because he had earned the opportunity according to the coaching staff, which to me meant that he'd earned the opportunity to be further evaluated to actually make this roster in an extended look, the way that they did with Jaxon and Jaxon Jackson in the return game last week, continue to do again this week in a different kind of situation, under the lights, in front of fans, real defense, different defense facing you. And I thought Malik Willis played better in the second half than he did in the first.
For sure.
The interception was less than ideal, but, a high ball there gets tipped up and ends up in the hands of a defender, less than ideal. And it could have been the game-losing interception. Then Mason Rudolph comes back in, sets them up in field goal position, allows Braden Narveson to make it from 46, or helps set Braden Narveson up for a spot to make it from 46, and ultimately clinches the game winner. He had the only touchdown drive of the game for the Titans on that side of things. And so there's nothing about Malik Willis tonight or in camp that makes me feel any different about the backup quarterback conversation. But I do think it's never been more viable to have 3 quarterbacks on your roster. And I think there's a very good chance that Malik Willis could and should probably be on this initial 53-man roster, because it's not a final 53, it's an initial 53.
Yeah, the initial 53 decision for Malik Willis, to me, is less about Malik Willis versus Mason Rudolph and more about Malik Willis versus name another offensive player that the Titans could potentially keep. I mean, it might be a fourth tight end versus a third quarterback, a fourth running back versus a third quarterback. Those are the decisions the Titans are going to have to make. Buck, I think that is potentially the reason why tonight was not a great night for Malik Willis, because I certainly was looking for Malik to do something that made everybody in the stadium say, yep, there's a reason why the Titans need to keep him around. I don't know if he did that something at any point.
I just don't think, respectfully to all of you lovely people who are watching out there listening, I don't think it really matters, what the people in the stands think. If the coaching staff sees incremental improvement, this is what I mean from the optics standpoint, you're looking to see something with our eyes from our vantage point in the press box, and I'm sure many people who were in the stands or watching on TV were looking for the same thing. Ultimately, it's more minute than that, right? You're talking about footwork, you're talking about mechanics, you're talking about, all right, the coaching staff and the quarterback knows the plays, knows the reads and how they're supposed to go through these progressions. And did Malik Willis do that to their satisfaction? That's not something that we'll necessarily have access to. For me specifically, it was about the pressure, how he handled it. Did he throw it away? Did he live to see another down? Did he take unnecessary sacks? Thought that was consistent pressure. He was out there a lot with the third string offensive line. He did get some reps with the twos, specifically in the second half. But for me, I think it's just a little more complicated, because I do think you have to understand what they're being asked to do on a different kind of level to truly grasp whether or not he's making sufficient progress in the minds of the coaching staff.
Sure. Other players of note, I think Jaxon Jackson did a lot for himself. Once again,
Jalen Harrell too, rookies showing out.
2 sacks for Jalen Harrell. Chance Campbell had another very good day, led the team in tackles. Jaxon Jackson, his biggest receiving impact we've seen from him thus far, with 5 catches over 40 yards. I think all of those guys starting to really cement their places on this 53-man roster. 60
yards, I want to say, for Jaxon Jackson.
I mean, Jaxon Jackson, somebody who's gotten better and better and better, and we saw it during joint practices. Now it's translating again over into a game. I think he very clearly has the inside track to be that wide receiver 6 in that room, and probably the return man that the Titans use a lot. Do you disagree with that? I mean, Kearis Jackson may be a loser of today simply because he goes out with the knee injury, and then Jaquan goes on to have a very big game while Kearis watches from the locker room.
Kearis did not return, not expected to be a serious knee injury. Brian Callahan told us in the postgame press conference, and Kyle Phillips is getting shafted by his hamstrings here.
Absolutely.
Because he's dealing with soft tissue injury. They feel that potentially he could return to practice and maybe make an appearance in the final preseason game when we travel down to New Orleans to see how that all plays out. But for Jaxon Jackson, there is no question that they value his element at special teams. They value his element as a receiver, and knowing all 3 roles, not just primarily the slot, that's something that he's taking pride in diversifying himself, essentially not just being looked at as a slot receiver, even though his size and skill set may lend itself better to playing inside.
Buck, one last guy I want to get your take on, because I thought Brian Callahan's comments about David Martin Robinson were very interesting tonight. Brian Callahan said, straight up, he's making a push for this 53-man roster. Was very impressed with how fluid he was as a catcher and as a runner, and we knew David Martin Robinson had athleticism to him, but he's impressed a lot of Titans coaches with his blocking ability as well and how consistent he's been in that regard. We saw Mason Rudolph go to 88 a couple of times on that final drive to set up that game-winning field goal. David Martin Robinson potentially now a guy who the Titans could consider keeping in that 4th tight end spot.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Callahan's not been shy at any point, and really since those initial comments heading into the offseason program about being light at the tight end position. He's been really excited about the tight end position. I take him at his word at that. And David Martin Robinson, an undrafted free agent. I know we haven't talked nearly as much about Steve Silianos, who has not made quite that impact, or Nick Vannett, who is a veteran option on this roster and probably would be viewed as the primary blocking tight end, depending on Josh Wiley, who suffered a not a concussion protocol worthy head injury in practice on Thursday, but did get pulled out of practice because he bounced his head off the turf. They were just being precautionary with it. So a lot of literally moving parts in the tight end room, where the 2 guys who I think a lot of Titans fans thought were competing for a starting job are basically going to be playing two totally different positions, and how the guys slot in after them as those 2 backups to 2 tight ends who do 2 different things is going to be an interesting discussion where you talk about the off-ball linebackers and the quarterbacks and the tight ends and wide receivers 6 and 7.
Do you think it's 4 tight ends?
It's complicated. I would be surprised if this is actually the Bengals' offense. There's not a huge
3 receivers
prioritization.
Pretty consistently, you might not need that 4th tight end.
I just don't know how they get everybody. Again, if what this offense is going to be is the Bengals' offense, and why wouldn't it be? You've got Tyler Boyd in the slot. You've got Calvin Ridley, who is scheduled to play the Jamar Chase role in all of this. So I'm going to assume that same role, which is not, I just wouldn't necessarily describe tight end as a priority in the Bengals' offense the last couple of years. They've had some guys who have made a difference going back to, I'm blanking on 87's name that went to the
Hurst.
Jets. No, not Hurst, but Hayden Hurst did have a career. Uzoma, who is somebody who did get a good contract from the New York Jets afterwards. He had a good season with the Bengals the year they went to the Super Bowl, and Hayden Hurst did have a career year before, I think, taking a contract with the Carolina Panthers. But all that being said, I just don't think, I'm not putting so much stock in the tight end position in general because I know how the Bengals offense operated.
Yeah. All right, that's all we got for you guys tonight from Nissan Stadium.
Are you sure? You want to look to make sure that we're here? You weren't sure based on the read when you said
looks like Nissan
over there
Stadium.
at Nissan Stadium.
I see Titans logos in the background.
I just want to double check.
Turf below my feet. We are at Nissan Stadium.
Touch grass.
Yeah, well, not doing it. This is artificial turf, Buck.
Not real grass.
We've got a press conference tomorrow afternoon. Brian Callahan with the media at noon Central.
For it'll be today when you're hearing this particular live stream broadcast.
A couple hours from now, if you're watching this right after it gets dropped, go ahead and check out Brian Callahan's press conference with the media. Those have been very thorough so far. So any other questions you've got on the Titans, hopefully getting answered there. Buck, you'll have A to Z Sports Primetime as well coming up on now tonight when these people are watching this. So see, quick learner, this guy. All right, guys, that's all we got. Talk to you next time. We'll see you later.
See ya.